Okay, so as much as I don't want to talk about this, I've said it before. It turns out that the live action Rachel Zegler movie is finally in theaters, which I'm not sure why they didn't just wait until the actual weekend. Why the middle of the week? I don't know. But anyway, so it's officially in theaters and the uh the reviews are in. What little reviews there are. And I'm sorry to those who went and had to go through that torture. There are pictures from those who reviewed, and they're showing that they are the only ones in the theaters. And I looked up our theater, and because I was curious, I was like, well, how many people here are going to go see it? Nobody. There are two theaters dedicated to this movie, and nobody. Now, it could change because as of right now, it's like 1:30 in the morning on a Friday. So it could change. But I would think with pre-ticket sales, somebody would have bought. No, it's nothing. Nobody, nobody bought. So, that now a lot of these channels have been saying for the past year and a half that this is going to be the biggest bomb in Disney history. And, at first when I was hearing that, I was like, okay, we get it. Rachel's attitude, i- yeah, it's going to destroy this movie and everything. I mean, Bob Iger had every chance to fire her, and for some reason, he's just keeping her there for whatever reason and all of this. But as this has been playing out, and now that we are here and the reviews are coming in, well, yeah, it's bombing, it's face planting, but I do have to say this, it's not the biggest bomb in Disney history. Newsies still holds the crown. And now don't get the wrong idea. I'm not making fun of the pop culture channels or anything like that because I don't expect them to know the history behind all the box office, history of every Disney movie or anything like that. But Newsies was the worst of the worst. I mean, it was so bad that Disney Corporation, and I remember when this happened. Not only did it bomb, and we'll talk about how bad it was when it bombed. It swept the Razzies at that time and a few other, it got like a stinker award and at another award show of some kind. And I mean, the critics just annihilated this movie. It embarrassed Disney Corporation to the point that they tried to erase it. They just erased they didn't they tried to scrub it basically. One of the reasons I remember this is because they did release VHS and soundtrack. And I bought both, of course. And I had a friend she was obsessed with musicals. And I thought, well, a perfect gift would be to give her the soundtrack to Newsies. I went into Sam Goody. They didn't have it anywhere in the store. So I asked the guy at the counter, did they have it? Well, it wasn't in their system. However, they had a VHS on the bottom rack. And so, and at first he thought that I was talking about the Christian group Newsboys. He says, "Well, I could show you that." And I said, "No, no, 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 no. Newsies, the Disney movie Newsies, like down there." And he said, "It's not in our system anywhere." And so I left, and A couple days later, now you have to understand, this was, I mean, uh, internet was in its infancy. So not a lot of people were using like Amazon. I don't remember if Amazon was a thing back then. So I wasn't using it. I didn't start using Amazon until after I graduated high school. So the idea of buying online was totally foreign to people. I mean, when eBay came in, people were like misusing it basically. Yeah, there are stories about that. And that's one of the reasons why Weird Al made the song that he did. Yeah. Yeah. The fact that people would sell half-eaten sandwiches and that kind of, oh yeah, when eBay first opened up. And from what I understand, eBay is not any better now. And anyway, so, but the thing is that I went, I was hanging out at the mall with my friends probably a few days later, went back and that VHS was gone. So I asked the lady about that and I said, "Are you going to be getting any more?" Because I figured they had sold it, so I asked if they were going to be getting any more Newsies movies or soundtracks. And she said that actually that VHS was sent back to the warehouse. They won't be getting any more. And the reason for it is because Disney Corporation had ripped them from the shelves. She goes, "No, I don't know about places like Walmart. Maybe they still have it. You could check there." She said, "But as for us, we were told to send anything Newsies back." So even their poster, I guess that they had those, the little kiosk with the posters and the sleeves and everything. They had those and they had to take them back. They had to put them in the things and in the tubes and send them back. So they weren't in Walmart anymore. They weren't uh I think it's called Kroger in other places, but it's Fred Meyer's here. And in the entertainment section, not there. And so in a lot of places with their entertainment sections, it was like Newsies didn't exist anymore. And when my family and I would go down to Portland to shop, there was Suncoast. Newsies wasn't there. Disney store of all places didn't have Newsies movie or soundtrack. And of course, they have that screen where it would show like the sing along stuff. Didn't have it. They wouldn't show the Newsies at all. Now, I don't know how other Disney stores are, but there was like one side where it had this little area where it had a book and it would show like sketches that you could buy from some of the cartoons, the classic cartoons, or from different movies, like the classic timeless movies, and even lobby cards. Newsies wasn't in there. However, they would have some of the most bizarre movies like Black Hole or uh Condor Man. Of all things, Condor Man was in there. So yeah, it was like they were just scrubbing it. So we're going to talk about why. Why this odd behavior over a movie? It just bombed. They didn't do that with Rocketeer. They didn't do that with Dick Tracy, which yeah, Dick Tracy was technically Disney, and some of these others that didn't quite make it, and what's going on? Well, let's talk about it. And yes, I'm going to be throwing the Disney fans, I mean, not the Disney fans. the Newsies fans under the bus. I'm going to be giving the Titanic fans a break here, and and to the Newsies fans, I know that you downvote my videos where I talk about Newsies. Thanks for the traffic, I guess. Sorry that facts hurt your feelings, but it's just how it is. Okay, so one thing that we can all agree on, the Newsies fans can all agree on. Of course, I'm not sure about the theater fans because there are theater fans that don't know about the movie. I've come across this quite a bit, and I'm not meaning, I don't want to sound mean. It's just they just don't know, and there are movie fans who are so absorbed in the movie they don't know that there's a Broadway show. It happens. And so, but when it comes to the movie, they agree that this seems like such an afterthought to the Disney Corporation. It's like they gave up on it before it was even released. And when I was in a Discord talking about it, it did bother me. It was like, yeah, it does seem like a massive afterthought. Okay, so why is that? I think I have the answer to that. So we're going to talk about that really quick because, okay, Michael Eisner was a CEO at the time. Okay. And he had this dream of releasing a trilogy, a lot like Indiana Jones. Okay, that's what he wanted more than anything. And he first tried it with Dick Tracy. However, Dick Tracy bombed, which is kind of surprising considering that you had this big cast. You had Warren Beatty and you had big cast. I mean, you had and there were a few cameos that came up that because I don't want to give a lot away. Um, Al Pacino's in it, and Dustin Hoffman's in it, and of course Madonna's in it, and but it just didn't make it. But it, it happens. But now I will say this: I thought that there was this big controversy surrounding Madonna taking Dick Tracy on tour. And it turns out, no, there was not. It turns out the controversy was with Prince. The studio tried to limit Prince. It's like, right. Yeah, go for that. Oh, I remember the summer of Batman. That was everything. I have a cousin who's like 7, 8 years older than me, and every summer she would come in because she lived in another state, and she would come into town and stay with grandma, and she would turn on MTV and just have it blaring in grandma's living room as she would get ready. And the thing is that when it was the summer of Batman, all of us younger kids usually would be bebopping around. But that Bat Dance, that music video was epic. That was, I mean, we watched it. We sat down and we watched it like it was a movie. It was so cool to watch. And Prince knew how to put on a show. He really did. And he's missed. He really is. But no, the controversy was around Batman and Prince, not with Madonna and Disney, at least that I could find. Um, yeah, it is kind of surprising that Dick Tracy didn't make it. You would think having the big cast that it did, having Al Pacino, Dustin Hoffman, Warren Beatty, and Madonna, it just it just didn't work. And there are a few other people, but for those of you that haven't seen Dick Tracy, um, it just and I mean the thing is that when you see the movie, it actually fits the classic comic strip. The colors, everything fit. So they went all out to make it fit. And but it just didn't work. So then he decided to try with the Rocketeer, and Rocketeer bombed. And Dave Stevens, who was the creator of Rocketeer, even said, "Well, this is as good as it gets." So even he knew that it wasn't going to make it. And now, since then, Rocketeer has there's a cartoon series over on Disney Junior. I don't know if it's still running, but I've seen a couple episodes. I think it's cute. You know, it's this little girl. She has the helmet, and she and her friends go on an adventure. There's a lot of Easter eggs to the movie itself. Billy Campbell actually um, does a voice for one of the characters, and you know, I find it absolutely adorable. Me being a big fan of Rocketeer, I mean, the way I see it, people, you know, the kids who watch that will later see the movie and be like, I saw that in the and so yeah, I think now there are people that have said because you know Disney tried to say that they were going to put out a sequel. This was about 4 years ago, I think. Yeah, they were going to put out a sequel for Rocketeer. And me personally, I think that would just ruin the charm of Rocketeer at this point. And so so that was the second attempt at making this trilogy that that Michael Eisner so badly wanted to do. Here's the other thing that happened during this time that was a big, massive blow to the Disney Corporation. They lost Howard Ashman. Howard Ashman died from the AIDS virus. He was very sick and sadly passed away. And if you ever get a chance, there are accounts on Instagram that show like behind the scenes, you know, Disney behind the scenes, and it actually shows Howard Ashman working with people such as Paige O'Hara. So he was very hands-on, so to speak, where he was helping her to get the song perfect. It shows him also just completely working behind the scenes. They show a lot of Beauty and the Beast behind the scenes, a lot of Aladdin behind the scenes, a lot of these movies behind the scenes. And so if you can find that, I highly recommend it. So you can see Howard Ashman at work. Um, but the fact that he gave us Little Mermaid, I mean, I remember rocking out to Little Mermaid when I was a little kid to the point where my parents had to hide the soundtrack. It's like, we need a break, child. Just, ugh. And and then of course the beautiful music behind The Little Mermaid. I mean, Beauty and the Beast. He also gave us a couple songs on Aladdin. Now, actually, and I didn't know this, he was the one that came up with the idea to make a musical Aladdin. And so he's the one to thank for that. And but sadly, we lost him in 1991. Beauty and the Beast is dedicated to him. And so, yeah, he also recruited Alan Menken. He and Alan Menken worked together. And but oh, he also did for those of you like Little Shop of Horrors, he was behind that as well. And I think I also saw where Oliver and Company was one that he did. So with Michael Eisner wanting to put together this trilogy, and then of course losing Howard Ashman. that was the big one, was losing Howard Ashman like that. And but there's another thing. Okay, I didn't even think of this. And of course, it is after Newsies was released, but we do have to take into consideration this because some of these movies are worked on for some time. Okay. Now, the same year that Newsies was released, there was another live action movie that was released, and that's The Mighty Ducks. Okay. This is a sports movie. Sports movies kids relate to a hell of a lot better than some, based on a true story musical thing. And but yeah, sports movies kids relate to. I can't tell you how many times I saw the Mighty Ducks. And not just because I had a friend who had a big crush on Emilio Estevez. Her brothers played hockey and they related to this. But there were all those baseball movies, you had like Rookie of the Year, you had Angels in the Outfield, you had the one Kid in King Arthur's Court, which I think is the same kid that was in Rookie of the Year, and the baseball player that goes back in time. The Sandlot. There was the Big Green that was a soccer movie. And so you have these movies where kids relate to them. It seems like there was a basketball movie too, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Like Sandlot is the number one because, of course, you have the kid that tries so hard to fit in and will do anything to fit in, like stealing something from their dad to make it, and will say and do anything, only to get in trouble every time. You also have the kid that is so dedicated and so obsessed with whatever it is that they're playing, such as the scene where it's the 4th of July and the kids are watching the fireworks and he's getting irritated. He's like, focus here. Typical kids. That's so, and we saw a lot of those movies too in the 80s, but they were really pumping them out in the 90s, in the early 90s especially. And then they kind of held back, and then we saw them again, especially with Miracle and Remember the Titans and those movies. They were coming back. So so those three uh things especially. Um yeah. So what made this bomb? Because obviously the afterthought would be, Eisner had this obsession losing Howard Ashman and the fact that they were working on all these sports movies that they pumped out, and the first one being The Mighty Ducks, which did turn into a trilogy. You have to take that into consideration. Yeah, I have the box set for that. And the third one didn't need to be made. It really didn't. One thing my friend told me, I have this friend, we've been friends forever, and one of the things that he pointed out, and I do have to agree with, he said that basically there was big hype surrounding Emilio Estevez's big comeback, and he has 5 minutes in the entire movie. Yeah. What what a disappointment. And so all that said, because yeah, kids do relate to sports more than they do, you know, some history lesson, basically. But this wasn't the only based on actual events movie that was put out in the early 90s. This was, I think, the first one. Now they did put out one, The Journey of Natty Gann was a TV movie that they put out. A lot of the TV movies that they put out in the 80s were based on actual events. The one that really sticks out because it's one of my mom's favorites is Journey of Natty Gann. And that was based in the Depression. And they did Chips the War Dog. That was one that was put out. Yeah. So they did quite a few of those TV movies that were m more so in the Depression and then World War II centered. In the 90s, this is one that kick-started because then they did like Iron Will, which has Mackenzie Astin in it, David Ogden Stiers, and um and then they did Squanto. They also did oh shoot, Operation Dumbo Drop, and so they were doing these movies based on actual events, and they they did okay. Squanto, not so much, but it did better than Newsies because I actually looked it up, and yeah, it didn't face plant like this, and even with the animated movies because they did put out Pocahontas, which Christian Bale voiced Thomas. I don't know why the Newsies fans who follow all of the guys who were in Newsies in the movie miss that. It's like they think that Christian Bale's voice acting started when he was doing the video games for Batman or with the anime. And it's like, no. How is it you missed? He was okay. Oh, your obsession failed. So, with that said, that would be one of those are some of the reasons why I think that this was an afterthought, even with a lot of the other, that came later. Because the Mighty Ducks, well, it was released the same year. It was released in October. Newsies was released in April, but they were being made at the same time. Okay, and I'm not really going to go into specifics as to the other ones, like which one was released in 93, 94. I think Squanto was released in 94. And of course, we know that Pocahontas was released in 95, but they did have to do research, reshoots because John Candy was supposed to be. Cool Runnings is another one. John Candy is in that one. I think that one is in 93. And but Pocahontas was John Candy was supposed to voice a character in that, and they actually had to redo it because he died. So anyway, with all of that, those are some of the reasons, especially with the with Howard Ashman passing away and Michael Eisner's obsession. The other two are just, major theories on my part with kids with sports and all of that. Bringing up the other historic movies, they did fine and everything. But anyway, that said, let's get into this now. Yes, it was an afterthought. And those are some of the reasons I think why. You don't have to agree with me. I have no problem with that. Like I said, that's my thought on the matter. Now, this was Kenny Ortega's director debut. All right, now I have heard time and time again all these defenses about, well, it was his debut. It was his first time directing a movie. He was in over his head and this and that and blah, blah, blah. If he was in over his head, he should have walked away and found somebody else to do the job. Okay, that cut the bullshit. All right. This is the thing, is that Newsies originally was supposed to be a drama. No song and dance or anything like that. No, it was supposed to be a drama. And Kenny Ortega couldn't help himself. He pulled out his ass that it was going to be a, a big old musical. Why? Now, before he was just a choreographer. Of course, he's best known for Dirty Dancing. He did Xanadu. He was one of the choreographers for Xanadu, which I think is the most oddball movie ever. Um, that's where he met Gene Kelly, and he also did. He was also a choreographer in Ferris Bueller. He did choreography for a few music videos, like for Madonna and Olivia Newton-John. I firmly believe that he met Olivia Newton-John when doing Xanadu. And so, anyway, so he was a choreographer. Okay, I'm trying to figure out why he suddenly became a director because I mean, where did the jump happen? It was like, oh yeah, he also worked on Pretty in Pink. Uh, so it was like, so in the 80s, he was doing all of these, all this choreography, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, and now you're gonna direct. But they gave him a drama about kids going on strike against Pulitzer and Hearst, this based on actual events, and he decides to pull out of his ass, well, let's make it a musical. Let's let's make it all happy fluffy. It's like that's no. Was he trying to make this like the Disney version of West Side Story? Okay, look, I can't emphasize enough how obsessed I was with Newsies when I was a teenager. I basically made it my personality, and anybody who knew me when I was a teenager, any of my high school classmates will confirm that. Okay? I want to make this perfectly clear. But now that I am middle-aged, I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm going to look at this from a business perspective. Okay? I'm going to be that cranky old woman in To Kill a Mockingbird who sat on her porch and screamed at the little kids. Okay? It's because I look at this now. I still love the movie very much, but the thing is that now at 42 years old, and some of the things that I read about this movie, and it's like, seriously, Kenny Ortega, what the hell? You could have done so much and you failed. You dropped the ball. You dropped the stack of newspapers and they scattered everywhere. Just, man, the fan base needs to stop being a massive kiss ass to this guy. You just need to stop kissing ass in general because here's the thing. Okay, so he was given $15 million. That was his budget. Okay, the opening box office weekend, 2.8 million. All right. And as it says here, this is due to the film being pulled from theaters after a poor opening weekend. Uh-huh. This movie ranks among the lowest grossing live action films produced by the Walt Disney Studios. Now, when it comes to this Rachel Zegler movie, as it stands, it has a 47% on Rotten Tomatoes. Internet Movie Database, it's 2.1 out of 10. Okay. Now, let's look at Newsies. If I get the right tab here. Okay, on Rotten Tomatoes, the average score is 39% for Newsies. Okay, so the Zegler movie is not the worst in history, in Disney history. Um, not by a long shot. The the consensus reads extra extra read all about Newsies instead of suffering through its underwhelming musical interludes, although Christian Bale makes for a spirited hero. Big ol' ouch there. Yeah, it was brutal critic stuff like that back in 1992 that made Disney Corporation want to scrub it. Now, Leonard Maltin, who is a film critic and a historian, he's known as being savage, absolute savage. And that's one of the reasons why Warren Beatty, who played Dick Tracy, is will troll him to no end. Go look up that story. I'm not going to get into it here. He's been trolling him since 1990. Okay. It's the most hilarious story ever. And um, he actually, when it came to Newsies, actually, before I get into that, uh, looking at the Internet Movie Data, because I didn't say what it was for Newsies. Actually, Newsies has a bigger rating at Internet Movie Database than the Rachel Zegler movie. 6.9 out of 10. So it won there. But I'm going to guess it's because of the newer fan base and everything, you know. Um, it received a cult following, and that's what I mean. But so Leonard Maltin actually compared Newsies to Howard the Duck. Okay, that called it Howard the Newsboy. All right. And I know that some people are looking at Howard the Duck as like, because, Marvel tried to bring Howard the Duck back. And so some people are looking at it from a different perspective. But Howard the Duck was hated back then. Absolutely hated. And so to compare it to another hated movie is pretty bad. Now, he also said this ambitious up to a point project is done in by a lackluster score. Let's start there. Okay. So, of course, Howard Ashman, if he hadn't been sick, would have been working on this. So the soundtrack would have been a whole different ball of wax. But Alan Menken, this was his first solo project, from what I understand. I don't have anything nice to say about Alan Menken right now. I know that there are a lot of Newsies fans who get their picture taken with, their selfies with him and everything, and they just think he's the bee's knees and all this stuff. Sorry, I don't. You know, he brings up Howard Ashman like it's a complete afterthought, at the same time trashing the legacy of Howard Ashman. How many soundtracks has he butchered that Howard Ashman brought to life? Yeah, that's why I don't have any respect. But if somebody had done that to Alan Menken would be having a fit. But he's doing it because Howard Menken, I mean, I'm twisting names right now. Howard Ashman isn't here to stop him. So he's doing it and thinking he's cute and quirky doing it. I think it's disgusting. Anyway, if you really had respect for the man, you wouldn't have done it, as far as I'm concerned. And he brings up Howard's name when it's convenient. So when it comes to the score, Alan Menken worked alongside the lyricist Jack Feldman. Now, before working on this, Jack Feldman did a couple songs for Oliver and Company. So he did work with Howard Ashman as well. Now, Jack Feldman also worked on, later on, he worked on a Goofy movie. So he gave us everybody loves Goofy movie. If you say you don't, you're lying. Okay, as far as I'm concerned. But for some reason with this one, there are some things that I have noticed. Now, Santa Fe, I absolutely love. I used to have videos of these. I had to take down the videos where I break down the songs of these because of the copyright strikes that I had on my channel. And with understanding, I mean, they're songs, so makes sense, and especially with Disney. Disney is pretty snarky. But Santa Fe is a good one. But here's one thing that has bothered me since I was a little kid. There's a scene where Jack and David and Boots go into Brooklyn. This is where you first meet Spot Conlon, and there is a song that is blaring. You know, the kids are jumping off the dock and swimming and all of this stuff, and it's like this very Irish sounding song, and it's not on the soundtrack. Why not? Why is that song not on the damn soundtrack? I Inquiring minds want to know why that is not on the soundtrack. It doesn't make sense. Instead, you put these uh reprises or however the hell you say it, you know, Santa Fe reprise and it doesn't make sense. You know, like the piano interludes where Christian Bale is pretty much doing a ballad of Santa Fe where he says like three lines from the originals. Nobody cares. Put in that Brooklyn Irish thing. And and then the chorus sees the day. You put that in where they sing the first line of sing sees the day, and then like the fighting sound. You put this in here, but you don't put in that. What? I hate when they cherry pick bullshit like this. Why are you putting that kind of stuff on the soundtrack, but you won't put the cool instrumental stuff that's in the movie? This doesn't make any sense. All right, fine. Because you know, you build up all of this stuff in the movie about Spot and how tough he is. I would think that you would make that track Spot Conlon. You know? Yeah, why can't Spot Conlon have his own theme music surrounded by dumbasses, you know? I have wondered this since I was a kid because I absolutely love that song and it's not there. Even in because they were remastering a lot of their uh soundtracks in the early 2000s. Disney decided to remaster. And surprisingly, they decided to remaster because I remember sitting in the dance studio and when we saw the news about it, we were like, why are they remastering Newsies of all things? They tried to erase it from history. And, well, it turns out because they released the DVD, they decided to go ahead and remaster the Newsies soundtrack. So there were a lot of people who were really excited because they had been trying forever to find this soundtrack for Newsies. But it turns out that the remastered wasn't remastered at all. They had just released the same damn soundtrack. All these others, you know, Bedknobs and Broomsticks and Mary Poppins and Cinderella and all these other Peter Pan and all that. Even the Happiest Millionaire, that 1967 movie that was basically the musical that had basically been forgotten, it had demo tracks at the very bottom. A lot of these had these demo tracks. Bambi has a couple of demo tracks. And But Newsies didn't have any of that. What the hell, Disney? Apparently Ella Keats had a track where she sang. You couldn't put that on this remastered, like all these others have these demo tracks. This is okay. That makes perfect sense. It really doesn't, but whatever. So that was the first problem that I had. Okay, that's more of a me thing than anything else. Maybe somebody else has the same problem with it, but honestly, if you're going to remaster something and all the others have these demo tracks, Dumbo had demo track. I had like a whole bunch of them, and all of them had a demo track of some kind. And you couldn't put okay, fuck. All right. Now another thing is with carrying the banner in the movie it cut this one section and long enough already. Your intro does not need to be that long. You know, again, I'm looking at it from a business point. Also, as a former dancer, why is your intro that long? There are other movies that have dancing intros that are not that damn long. Okay. And the fact that you cut a section out and it's still that long is, is okay. Because the song itself, when it's on here with the part that had been cut in the movie, it's 6 minutes and 15 seconds. Okay. But in the movie, it's a lot longer. I think it's like 10 minutes because, of course, there's parts where the kids are talking and laughing and joking around while they're waiting for the distribution office to open up. And yeah, it's too long. Well, there's a section in here in Carrying the Banner when they see the headlines being written on the board, and there's a part in there, the lyrics that say, the guy who wrote it must be working for the Sun. So they're making fun of this journalist article writer guy. And I actually got attacked because I pointed that out and I was like, well, wait a minute. So here's these kids who work for Pulitzer and Hearst, and technically Pulitzer here because of where they're at. And then once the strike happens, they put all their trust into a guy that works for the New York Sun, Bill Pullman's character. And it was like they just didn't click in their mind. It's like, look, I love the movie too, but that's a contradiction. Yes, kids, that's what we call. So the movie contradicts itself with stuff like that. Nobody picked up on that when they were going through the final thing. I mean, the fact that you have this song and then Bill Pullman's character shows up when they decide to go on strike and he works for the Sun and they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll put our trust in you now that we're on strike against these two guys." Fuck out of here with that. Whatever. Now, here's the thing is that the Razzies just went after this movie. Okay, way back. And I mean, this movie has Bill Pullman and Margaret and Robert Duvall. Okay, now Christian Bale, you have to understand, was a rising star. This is something that a friend of mine pointed out. Okay, now Christian Bale was in the movie Empire of the Sun. Now, in the 80s, they had a lot of epic movies, such as Empire of the Sun. And there was also like the Littlest Emperor, I think is what it's called. And of course, Gandhi. And so you had these big, Amadeus is another one. So you had these big movies. Well, Christian Bale was in one. Well, when he was in that movie, it said on the poster introducing Christian Bale. So he was introduced to American audiences. He had done a couple movies over in Europe before doing this and before doing Empire of the Sun. Given that, now that he is officially introduced to American audiences, why wasn't he on the poster? Because there's a poster where he's on the shoulders of these newsboys, and you see the names Anne Margaret and Robert Duvall. Disney screwed him. His name should be there. Because, like, he did six other movies altogether, and I believe five of them were over in Europe. One of another one, what, and I have it. It's right here. I'm so excited to finally have this, and if I can get it, this one was a joint between Europe. From what I was reading, it was a joint by Europe, I believe, the UK and America. But he was in it. Okay. And I don't know what year this is. Does it say? But I don't think it says. But it doesn't really matter. I believe this is the one he did before doing Newsies. Okay. But but so his name should have been on the poster. He was a rising star, and especially when he was introduced, it clearly said on the poster. I actually had to look at the poster again because it does say on the Blu-ray introducing and everything for Empire of the Sun. And why wasn't his name on there? Now, as for, let's see, because Swing Kids has the name, this was the year after. Oh, it doesn't have their names on it. Okay. That was the next year. And, well, I'm not gonna say I have Little Women over there. Of course, he wasn't the star in that one. No, it was Winona. Winona Ryder was the star. And but the fact that he was a star and his name was not on the poster, that's shitty. I didn't even think of that until my friend was pointing that out. I mean, even the one where he's here, it's got the sunset look and everything and the pile of newspapers and he's leaping over and all this and it says the musical newsies, a thousand voices, a single dream, and all of this. It should say starring Christian Bale. Now, before you get the wrong idea where you're saying, well, this is because you're a big fan and all this. No, this is business. Okay, if the main guy was Daniel Craig, it should say starring Daniel Craig. Serious. Why? Why didn't they put his name on the poster? Instead, they put Aunt Margaret and Robert Duvall. He had been introduced by Steven Spielberg when he was in Empire of the Sun. People knew him. People saw this movie in the 80s. Oh, I'm actually surprised that he went ahead and he voiced the character in Pocahontas after being backstabbed like that. Anyway, but I wasn't there. I don't know. I can't speak for him. Okay. Speaking of marketing for this movie, let's talk about that because that's another thing that comes up quite a bit. There was no marketing for this. There was a novelization, and when you went to see the movie, those that did, there was a collector newspaper. And then, of course, later there was the movie and soundtrack that was later pulled from. Okay. See, there were no video games, there was no apparel. I would think with a movie like this, you would have like action figures or at least a video game of some kind. There was no fast food, anything. Uh, I mean, like, oh, what was it? Rocketeer was with Pizza Hut, and Rocketeer had like three video games. Who Framed Roger Rabbit had a bunch of video games. And no, there was no marketing for this movie at all. Why? Like, um, that makes no sense. You have two big names in here. Well, actually three, because Bill Pullman, he was in like Spaceballs and movies like that. So you had three big names. You had a rising star in this movie. And pardon? Th Yeah, $15 million. Dollars. You had 15. What did you didn't think to put any marketing in this? So he's the director. There was a producer. Who was the executive producer? Because usually the executive producer usually does all of that stuff. And I guess that there was none. See, that's your problem. You didn't do that, or you didn't have anybody decide, well, we need to put out marketing of any kind for this. It was like this was the moment when there was the cartoons had it. Like the DuckTales video game is still popular. One of my childhood friends was talking about how her kids got like this bundle of classic video games and they were playing the DuckTales and she had to do everything in her power not to steal it from them and be like, let me show you how it's done. Yeah, that's interesting because seriously, I mean, with Rocketeer, they had you could even put out a comic book because Rocketeer had a comic book. Of course, it already started as a comic book, but the fact that you would have like the movie version, so to speak, they did that with Condor Man as well because, of course, he was a superhero and that kind of thing. They were still pumping out uh comics for Roger Rabbit in the 90s and into the mid 90s and everything. And they put out revival Dick Tracy when the movie came out. I mean, Chester Gold, I don't remember when he died. I think it was the 70s or 80s. So he was gone by the time the movie came out. But they were putting out these comic books that were like a new generation story of Dick Tracy. And so they were marketing the crap out of Dick Tracy with apparel. I remember my cousin. Oh, he loved Dick Tracy. And he had the yellow hat and he wore it all the time. He didn't care if it didn't fit the rest of his clothes. And but he wore that thing. He loved it. And he adored Dick Tracy. He loved the movie, everything about it. All of, everything Dick Tracy he adored and loved. But the thing is that they didn't even try with Newsies. Now, I have said in previous videos where it was like, okay, maybe they didn't put out a video game because of the video game Paperboy, and maybe there was going to be a problem there. Now I'm going to call bullshit on that. Okay. I'm just, I think it's just laziness at this point. I think it's just pure laziness and the fact that because of the other things that were going on, Eisner's obsession did not happen, anything like that. There actually was merchandising for um the Mighty Ducks. Now, some of the other history movies, they didn't put out a lot of merchandising. Some of them had like fast food stuff and that kind of thing, maybe a Happy Meal thing here and there. But the fact that Newsies did not receive anything like that doesn't make sense. Like the best thing you could do is have these action figures where the kids could collect all of the figures. Why didn't they do that? Like for as much as people did not like Kevin Costner's Robin Hood, okay, for whatever reason, they marketed the living shit out of that movie. They did. I remember the cereal boxes, and on the back they had like the castle, or they had like a village scene, and you would cut them out, and they would have the little figures as well. I had that on the floor of my room, and one day I came home from school and it was gone. My mom denies getting rid of it. I know she did. I know she did. And it was like that was not yours to get rid of but because she was just sure it was garbage. They had cereal for that. They had um they had the action figures, which I had two of them, and you know there was all kinds of things. They could have made, a lot of times they had school supplies, even just a folder. And I have folders for Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean marketed the living crap out of it. I mean, from mugs to pillows to whatever, towels, all of it. And they didn't do any of that with Newsies. But they were doing that. They had like a some kind of candy something or other, Pez dispensers and that kind of thing with uh Rocketeer. Now, Rocketeer had a scene where he was chewing Beeman's gum. And from what I remember, because there were three different kinds of gum. There was Blackjack, Clove, and Beeman's. These are classic uh gum. And from what I remember, there was actually an agreement with the Beeman Company, and you could see, because I remember seeing where it had the Rocketeer on the display. And so he was selling Beeman's gum because of the fact that you saw Beeman's in the movie. So just things like that. In the 80s and 90s, people were buying these collector cards. I have one of, let's see, do I have, yeah, right here. Stuff like this. And you would get a card, and of course there was a pack of bubble gum in it. And I used to have like the whole thing of Aladdin. and it would have scenes from the movie. These cards would have scenes from the movie, and you would collect them all. And sometimes there was like a bonus one. And in certain movies and everything, you could send it away and you would get something back. And but I don't know if they do this anymore. But why didn't Newsies do this? It blows my mind that there was absolutely no marketing at all for this movie, except for a novelization and this collector newspaper that you got at the movie theater, and the VHS and the soundtrack that were actually ripped from the shelves because Disney Corporation was so embarrassed over, over this movie. Where did this 15 million go? Because I hear a lot of, well, the backdrops look so authentic. They look like 1899. It looks like, who cares? I'd rather watch Amadeus. Okay. Have you seen Amadeus? Look at that. Okay. The same time that this was released in 1992, the TV series Young Indiana Jones Chronicles was released, and he was actually shooting on location. All those places that Indy went, he was shooting on location. This was on a backlot at Universal Studios. It was not actually at New York. At no time were they at New York. It- okay, 15 million. There's, a lot of the fans talk about how one of the dresses that Ella Keats wears is actually from 1899. So for $15 million, because I also hear, before I get into that, I also hear, I heard one person where she was like, I actually paused and I saw where the dress got torn. You need a hobby. It's, it's like if you are, I mean, if you hear the little tidbit of trivia where the dress got torn and they didn't edit that out of the movie or anything like that, and that's your major freak out. Okay. But this is where I have a problem is that so this dress from 1899, knowing that it was delicate, they just went ahead and let her wear it and it tore, it ripped, and they could have easily hired somebody to reconstruct it, make a new one that looks just like it. There are people that do that. Crazy, I know, but oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to freak out over the fact that an 1899 dress got torn in a movie. That's not trivia to me. That's destruction. Okay. When he had the money that he could have a costume designer come in and recreate the dress and she could have worn it. I'm not understanding this obsession with having to wear old dresses and destroy them. Okay. And this attitude of, well, the people are dead, they're not going to care. Those things can't be remade. Okay. As soon as they're torn, fuck out of here with that. Okay. Now, the next thing that was said, if you remember, we were talking about Leonard Maltin's review and lackluster score. And it was also done in by cramped production numbers that seemed cheap. Yeah, let's talk about that. As a former dancer, now you have to understand, I've talked about this on my channel. Okay. I taught myself those dance numbers. Okay. The only one I couldn't get was Christian Bale's solo because he's a little asshole. I did. I tried so hard to get it. And it was like no matter what I did, I couldn't, all those years of dance, and he just pulls it out of his ass, whatever. It's the one thing I hate him for. But so let's talk about these cramped production numbers. Okay. First thing I'm going to go off on is carrying the banner. Because I feel like what Kenny Ortega wanted to do is just show off his choreography skills and did everything all at once. Because when you watch carrying the banner, there's like at one point where it's like too much. It's like there's something going on here, something going on here, something going on in the back, something was that necessary? Because no, it wasn't. It really was not. That is too much for the eyes to focus on. Okay. Even my first year of choreography, I didn't do that. Uh, um, Now the world will know is the thing about the world will know, it's like that's where he doesn't have so much going on at the same time. Everybody's doing they're all together in time and all of this stuff. And then when you have the two people working together, and that's fine. And you're in an open space. But then all of a sudden you do seize the day and they're in a small space. They're in that really, really small space. Why weren't you out in the open space that you were before? Why are you right next to that small enclosure next to the that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, when they do seize the day, why did you have to do this small area when earlier you did? And for the timeline, they did two dances in one day because they did the world will know to officiate to say that they are officially going on strike. Then the kids go to Brooklyn to, say, well, Spot, we need you and your guys and all this stuff. When Jack comes back, that's when, and he's like, well, Spot says we're not really being serious and all this stuff. And they sing Seize the Day. So it's like too much. You need to spread it out. Spread, spread it out. And, oh, Lordy. Plus, okay, I hate picking on David Moscow, but I got to do it because I get it. He's not a dancer. He really, which is okay. And he ended up in the movie Honey. Yeah. Jamie French was talking about the movie Honey, and I was like, "Oh, he ended up in this one about it, about dancing." Okay, but they didn't even try to cover up the fact that he can't dance. They didn't. They had at one point where he's just jumping up and down, and it's, in the Muppet movie, in the 2011 Muppet movie, the guy that's in it, I can't remember his name. Sorry, I when they're doing the dance routine at the beginning, when Life's a Happy Song, the camera angles that they use and the people, the actual dancers are working around him and the way he's moving and everything. He's not a dancer, but the way that they work that and everything is is fine. I mean, the audience knows that he really can't dance, but it works. In Newsies, it's like they didn't even try. It's like, okay, we get it. He has two left feet, but you're embarrassing him now. And so I do feel bad for David Moscow. Kenny Ortega should have tried harder. And so that was one of the cramped areas was right next to that statue. He should have migrated it over to the other side because they moved away from the earlier for the world will know they moved away from that statue. Why didn't you do it again? Doesn't make sense. Another time where they should have migrated out of the area was King of New York. Now, King of New York is like the signature song. Now, apparently, that was like an afterthought for Alan Menken and Jack Feldman. And it happens. A lot of times you have these afterthought whatevers and they become the star of the show. And yeah, it's funny how that happens. But the in the movie it takes place in the diner. In this small little New York diner is the setting for it. And what he should have done because of what the lyrics say and everything, look at me, I'm the king of New York. Suddenly I'm respectable staring right at you. Migrate them out into the streets. Have them singing and dancing in the streets. This is a thing that happens. How many musicals have you seen, Kenny? I'm not understanding because in Fame, in the movie Fame, the 1980 movie Fame, because I know it's been remade, which everybody forgets that, but there's a moment where the dad of that one fella comes over to the school. He puts up the speakers on his car and blasts the song Fame. And all these people come out into the streets of New York and just start singing and dancing. They're just dancing and having a good time. So they migrate out from their apartments, from the school, everything, and they are just dancing and having a blast. Okay, there's one example. Another example would be the movie Tap. Okay, in the movie Tap, which has Gregory Hines and I believe Sammy Davis Jr. is in it as well. There's a moment where they are in a bar and they start dancing and they go out into the streets of New York. Why is it always New York? Just thought of that. But they go out into the streets of New York and they just continue dancing and everything. I'm sure these aren't the only two movies where that happens. I'm sure that there are Gene Kelly movies where it happens, Fred Astaire movies where it happens. And I mean, the fact that he met Gene Kelly while doing Xanadu, I kind of feel like this was the point where he was going to be a huge kiss ass to Gene Kelly. And the reason I say that is because of the fact that this was supposed to be a drama. And he all of a sudden decides, you know what? I'm going to make it a musical. I'm going to make it musical. But the thing is that Gene Kelly was pretty much, he knew that the age of musicals were done. In fact, he was trying to distance himself uh, from Singing in the Rain. He wanted no part of it anymore. He just wanted nothing to do with it. I mean, it's a wonder that when he was on the Muppet Show, Jim Henson was able to get him. Now, he didn't sing the song. He basically hummed it and he was, yeah. And so Jim Henson had that magic that he could get. And but yeah, he was distancing himself from the main movie that everybody knew him from. That happens. A lot of times people do these movies and they have like this iconic thing that they're known for and they don't want to be a part of it anymore. You know, not everybody and I kind of get tired of people who are like, but this is what made you famous. It's like the Olsen twins. They want no part of Full House anymore. We don't know what happened on set. As much as you think you know what happened on set, you don't. Leave them alone. Okay? Their parents wanted to make money off of them. Okay? Just stop. And I see it all the time whenever the Olsen twins are brought up. It's like, well, they should be grateful for what made them famous. And it's like, you mean their parents who wanted to mooch off of them? Yeah. My gosh. Oh. So yeah, G Gene Kelly was pretty much finished with musicals. But the thing is that Kenny couldn't let it go. He didn't get the memo that basically musicals were just animated movies at this point. By this time, animated. They were starting to fade by the mid 80s, mid to late 80s. I mean, you would have your musical numbers in there, such as in Ferris Bueller, where you have that parade scene and all of that. But the actual musical was over. And so, yeah, why would you change something so like Newsies going on strike? These kids, these street kids going on strike against two powerful men of New York City into a song and dance thing. I just don't get it. So I do really think that this was a big, major moment where Kenny Ortega was kissing the ass of Gene Kelly, and it failed miserably. And yeah. Um, but another production number that I want to talk about, and then we'll move on, is one that received a Razzie Award, and that is High Times, Hard Times. Okay, now High Times, Hard Times is the rally song, and I have this to say about the song. Okay, when it comes to a rally song, like especially for this, okay, the kids are on strike, and the point is you're supposed to gain support. Okay, you're at a rally, you're supposed to gain support and everything, and you're supposed to hype up the crowd and all of this stuff about what it is you're doing. This song does not do that, like at all. Now there's a part in it that is cut from the movie, but it's in the soundtrack. The part that is cut is just Meta going off about herself, and it makes no sense to anything. I'm not sure why they even put it in. Yeah, Okay. Again, business sense. This is, again, the lyricist is the same guy that gave us a Goofy movie. This is what floors me. I absolutely love a Goofy movie. I have the soundtrack, I have the movie. And I have a friend who is as obsessed with a Goofy movie as I am with Newsies. So, or Gladiator, I guess, at this point. And but the thing about High Times, Hard Times is that when it comes to the fanfare of it and everything, the fanfare is fine, but the song does not fit. Okay. And that's why it got worst original song at the Razzies. And it's probably this is the other thing is that the Razzie Awards gave worst supporting actress to Anne Margaret. Okay. You to have Anne Margaret in your movie and she ends up getting the Razzie Awards for that. What? But here's the interesting part. Okay, so I found Roger Ebert's review for this movie. Uh, I'll put it in the description box. I was surprised. This was released. Let's see, what does it say? Come on now. April 10th, 1992. Now, what he says about Anne Margaret. Anne Margaret, who plays Meta, the dance hall star, has a role whose purpose is all but incomprehensible. She acts as a sort of big sister and confidant to the striking newsboys, chucking some of them under the chin while talking to others in terms of fairly alarming intimacy. Are we to guess that her dealings with some of the lads have gone beyond buying a paper for a penny? She performs on stage in her music hall, which functions in the movie primarily as a transparent device for getting an Anne Margaret number into the show. Yeah, I've always wondered about that, and there are a lot of us who have wondered, a lot of the fans have wondered about that too, because there's this whole thing. Look, she's an attractive woman. We get that. I mean, she still looks amazing. She's 80 years old and she still looks amazing. But the way that they play her off with these kids, the relationship between her and Jack, and especially that moment with her and Racetrack, what is going on? And it's written perfect here. Are we to guess that her dealings with some of the lads have gone beyond buying a paper for a penny? Eh, um, yeah. What were you doing there, Kenny? Now it would be one thing if she was protective of the kids and everything. Fine, whatever. Kind of a sanctuary type thing. But the way that I mean the way that you see her and Jack interact, and then when the the way that he passes off the relationship that he has with her, it's always been baffling to a lot of fans. They have always had questions about that. It doesn't make sense. Now, a lot of concert hall dancers and a lot of concert hall ladies are very flirtatious, fine. But this is questionable. Okay, she's a business owner. That's the thing because Jack even says Meta owns the joint. So she should be keeping it in check. Okay. even for back then, because of how times were back then. If it had been found out that she was fooling around with these kids, she could lose her business and go to prison. So, but the thing is that aside from that, is that here you have Aunt Margaret, and it was like, now Lovey Dovey Baby fits the time. It does. That song, I have heard a lot of songs from that time period, and it works. Considering that she's the owner of a concert hall and she also performs at this concert hall and all of that, it fits. But when it comes to high times, hard time, it does not fit. And again, you're in a cramped area. This is supposed to be a rally. And I've heard again, well, it's authentic and it works, and this is, historically accurate. No, it isn't. In fact, on this page, on this Newsies page, it has been changed, where it said apparently the fans have learned a new word because it says at Metaluxon's Bowery. It used to say at Irving Hall. You don't know what Bowery means. You just learned a big word and you decided to use it. This is the thing. When it comes to Bowery, the word me, I'm going to read all of this for you. Okay. Bowery, a colonial Dutch plantation or farm, or street in New York City, a city district known for cheap bars and for having many unhoused people living in the streets. That's not her place, is it? That's not the concert hall where she's at. No, like a bower, full of bowers. Okay, let's look at that. Okay, a bower, an attractive dwelling or retreat. Well, that's not the concert hall. A lady's private apartment in a medieval hall or castle. Well, that's not medieval. A shelter, as in a garden, made with tree boughs or vines twined together. Also, a nautical term, an anchor carried at the bow of a ship. So, you done fucked up here. Why did you change it? It's an obvious concert hall. The Bowery Boys were living on the streets and they terrorized. What are you doing here? What, you obviously didn't know what it meant. You just learned a big word and you decided to fling it around. Okay. The truth of the matter is that she lived. It says in the movie when it shows the front, Irving Hall, hall as in concert hall. Not. It didn't say Bowery. Fuck out of here with this. Oh my gosh. Yes, I'm frustrated because seriously, people learn what words are, get a dictionary for Christmas and use it. Okay. Gosh. So yeah, the concert hall setting in that movie is not accurate. Yes, it's filled with a bunch of kids and everything, and she's trying to dance around in there. But the fact of the matter is that it is not accurate. There are other musicals that are saloon, these saloon girls are dancing and everything, and it's open. Lucille Ball has done movies where it's open. She's like this showgirl and it's open. There are pictures that I have seen of the interior of Irving Hall, and they did billiard contests with several different billiard tables in there. And you're trying to tell me that that closed space, that's bullshit. It doesn't matter what Irving Hall it was. I don't give a shit. The fact of the matter is the fact, because there's going to be someone that's going to flutter, well, it was this concert hall, not that concert hall, and it doesn't matter. It was a concert hall, and there were billiard tables all over in there. It was an open space, and if you can put like five different billiard tables in there, but in that enclosed space, it's ridiculous. Why was Kenny Ortega so obsessed with these small spaces? It wasn't like the parade scene in Ferris Bueller. Okay, this is ridiculous. Now, another thing that Leonard Maltin said was that it had a bloated running time. Okay, and I have to agree. I actually looked at several different movies, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit is like an hour and 45 minutes. I think Dick Tracy is the same. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is about an hour and a half. Rocketeer is the same. And so is um, uh, The Mighty Ducks. So those are some examples. Not even 2 hours, but you have this movie that is 2 hours. I even looked up some others and it was like, okay, so how about The Untouchables, a movie that's based on actual events? And it's not even 2 hours. No. Uh, uh, you know, if he had cut these reprises that he has in here where they go out here and they sing like the first line, like a line, and then they just do like these fighting stances all through. There was no reason for that. It probably would have dropped the time. Just like when Jack is caught and in the refuge. Okay, they made this whole big thing about how he sings like few seconds of Santa Fe again. It's not needed. Just have him talking to Crutchy and then stop. You could have the piano interlude thing going in the background and all of this stuff. There's a lot of things that could have been cut out and you could drop it to an hour and a half. But it was like Kenny Ortega just couldn't stop himself. And that's one of the reasons why there's also a lack of research. Now, I'm fully aware that with a lot of these, you're not going to get accuracy. I see it all the time with a lot of, well, it's just for entertainment. You're not going to get accuracy. But I see it all the time in the comment section. And it's like, well, this is the thing is Kid Blink wasn't the leader in this movie. Like you could have Christian Bale. Kid Blink was the afterthought in this. He was running around behind Christian Bale the whole time. That's the part that gets me. Like Yeah, and the actual Kid Blink from 1899, one of his nicknames was Big Red because he had red hair, and the kid that played Kid Blink had blonde hair. You couldn't even buy a wig? $15 million? You couldn't buy a wig? What were you doing with that money? Trying to make the Universal Studios lot look 1899-ish? Okay. I just look, you could still have Christian Bale be the star, be the main kiddo, but make him Kid Blink. Why was that changed of all things? Look, I can look past the whole thing with because we found out that Pulitzer wasn't even in New York. Okay, I can look past that. Um, and I can look past a lot of other things that are inaccurate in the movie. But Kid Blink, really? Okay. And this is the problem that I have is that okay, so when you look at the trivia for Newsies over on Internet Movie Database, a lot of it is fictional anyway. So, because the fans can't stop themselves. And I went there. But here's the thing is there's a section here that it says most of the Newsies depicted in the film are based on real people from the strike, such as Spot Conlon, Racetrack, Kid Blink. Jack Kelly, however, is a fabrication, though he may have been based on the real Kid Blink. You know that's a lie. Okay, so this is the thing is that there was a group of of Newsies fans who got the chance to go see the first showing of the Broadway show. And which fine, that's wonderful for them. You know, cool. And apparently they were told a bunch of stuff by Disney. And one of the things that they were told was that Jack Kelly wasn't real. So if Disney told you to cut your arm off, would you do it? If Disney told you to cut your arm off because it had to be done, otherwise the world would end, would you do it? I feel like you would believe that, so you would just cut your arm off because this is a fucking lie. Okay, the fact that Disney told these people, these fans, that Jack Kelly didn't exist. The fact of the matter is that there's newspaper clippings showing that he existed. It was even used in the Broadway show. So that shows how stupid you are. Okay, the fact that you are still running around posting stuff, you're making the fan base look bad when you do shit like this. The fact that you armchair historians are going around trying to say that you know everything about the strike, but then you're mouthing off saying things that Disney told you. I've had like six of them tell me the story now. So, I'm just like, whatever at this point. The fact that they actually posted this bullshit is beyond me. Um, Jack Kelly was real. There's newspaper clippings to prove it. and the fact that a lot of you go to the show or went to see the show and Broadway show. I've seen the screenshots, or people took pictures that show that there was a screen at the Broadway show and it shows that that was Jack Kelly is not a fabrication. Okay, and you don't know if Jack Kelly was part of the strike or not. You can read every newspaper in existence, and that still doesn't prove shit. You can sit there and try to say that you're a little expert on every little thing that ever happened in 1899, and that means nothing. Okay, I sat here and I read a bunch of newspapers going as far back as 1880s for Seattle to learn more about the Seattle Newsies from the 1880s to the 1940s. Okay. And I learned a lot, but I don't know everything about them. And I'm not about to say that I do. Okay. So just stop with the bullshit. Get your head out of your ass. This is immaturity at its finest. Oh my gosh. Quit it. Okay. Because I know that there are Newsies fans out here who don't believe this junk. And yet there are those who make the Newsies fan base look bad by posting this crap. Okay. But what's funny about this is that then you scroll down. If he's a fabrication, why did you post Jack Kelly was born as Francis Sullivan in 1882? I'm going to say this right now. People come to Internet Movie Database for the movie. They want to know about the behind the scenes. They want to know about the actors. They want to know about all of that stuff. They don't care about the history lessons. Okay. Do a podcast. Do a podcast, post a blog, something. But this kind of crap doesn't belong on Internet Movie Database. All right. And you need to get your facts straight. Seriously, because you contradicted yourself big time. And especially here where it says, in the Carrying the Banner number, a lady interrupts the song looking for her son Patrick. It is never stated, but more than likely she was looking for Spot Conlon. He was born Sean Patrick. You're making up stuff. This is fan fiction stuff that you're posting here. You're wanting it to be real and you need to quit it. This is sick. Okay, and like I said, there are a lot of fans, theater and movie, who don't believe this nonsense, who don't believe this junk, but you're making them look bad when you post this crap. And again, people come to Internet Movie Database for the movie. They could care less about this stuff. They don't care about your fantasy or whatever it is that's here. Okay, when it says it is never stated, that means that it's in your head and you want it to be real. Okay, and where is your proof that he was born Sean Patrick? Because you want to know something? I looked high and low all over the place for more information on Spot Conlon. And I'm having a hell of a time trying to find him. Hell, I'm having a hell of a time trying to find more information on Noodles Fagan. So don't give me this shit, especially when newsies from all over trade names. So you can't say that. Okay? Keep the history lesson for podcasts and blogs. The rest of this that actually has to do with the movie, like behind the scenes and all of that, keep it here. That's what people want to know. Okay? Oh my gosh. So, that said, yes, I unloaded, and I know it. I unloaded. But it does bother me. It bothers me a lot when I come across sites like this, and it's like eh, all of this, and it is, there's a lot of it that is just fan fiction. And I know that there's a lot of the fan base that doesn't believe any of this stuff. They know that Jack Kelly existed. Okay, they know it, but there are these uppity dumbasses who think that they are the speaker of the fan base. No, you're not. Okay, nobody is a speaker of any fan base. All right. No. When you think that Jack Kelly doesn't exist, but it turns out that uh there are several newspaper clippings to prove that he does, you lost. Okay. So just sit down. All right. Moving on. Rant over. Over and done. So yeah, Jack Kelly existed. Kid Blink was the leader though. So how is it that we're with Christian Bale? Like I said, Christian Bale could be the star of the show, but why is it that they decided to make Jack Kelly the lead? There's just so much inaccuracy in this whole movie. It's like he, you shouldn't have made this a musical, pal. Okay, you should have kept it at a drama. Okay, now I understand that this is, well, even as a Disney movie, I mean, you look at other Disney movies at the time that were coming out, and you could have put the riot at the Brooklyn Bridge. And considering some of the content that is in this movie, there's no reason why you could not have put uh, the riot at the Brooklyn Bridge. I'm, looking at this now, why weren't there newsgirls? Because there were newsgirls that contributed. I mean, especially when we talked about Squealer, and there were also those older newswomen like Mrs. Shea. Why weren't they a part of this? How come you only showed newsboys? Um, Now before people are going to go off on this whole thing about sexism and all of that stuff, no, it would be an accurate thing if it showed newsgirls as well. That's all I'm saying. And they could have had the older women newsies. In fact, there was a married couple that sold papers in New York. Unfortunately, the husband was killed by a carriage. Tragic. Uh, It's just stuff like this that he didn't research enough. And it's like, you know, I can look over a lot of things, just like with Pulitzer being out and everything, but you also should have shown Hearst when they are referencing Hearst and the journal in a song. You should show Hearst as well, not just Pulitzer. All right, we need to see his side because, again, we showed where the Newsies were taunting. In that video I did, the Newsies were taunting Hearst. He went out to buy a paper and the Newsies were taunting him. And he made it sound like, oh, I barely made it with my life. And it's like, bitch, please. Yeah, so this should not have been a musical. And but I will say again that I think this was a big ass kiss project where Kenny was doing that with Gene Kelly. It was like, I'm going to show him that I can do this, and it didn't work. Now, the next year was Hocus Pocus, and it did really well for a lot of reasons, I'm sure. And you had Bette Midler. It was a Halloween movie and whatever, and it's still, I mean, it never lost its fan base. It never did. My aunt loves that movie. She she has always loved that movie ever since it came out. But I also think she's a big Bette Midler fan. She's never confirmed that, but this is the thing about that is unlike with Newsies, where he had these three big stars. He had Bill Pullman, Robert Duvall, and Anne Margaret, and he didn't use them to their full potential like he could have, such as with Roger Ebert talking about Anne Margaret's part in the movie. Um, he did that in Hocus Pocus. Okay, and it's almost like he just basically left Alan Menken and Jack Feldman alone to do everything over here and didn't really check up on him. It was like, no, that's your job. I don't have, and it's like, you're the director. And so, um, there was something else that Roger Ebert said. Yeah, right here. It's towards the end, and I saw the movie at a Saturday morning preview attended by hundreds of children. From what I could see and hear, the kids didn't get much out of it. No wonder. Although the material does indeed involve young protagonists, no effort is made to show their lives in a way today's kids can identify with. And, it's true. I mean, at the time in 1992, um, concept of paperboy was starting to fade away. And I was in fourth grade at this time, and by the time I was in middle school, eh, I would have been old enough to be able to sell papers, and I had always wanted to. I had a cousin who was a paper boy. Um, I knew several other kids who were who sold newspapers and everything for extra coins and everything. And I wanted to do it, but by the time I got into middle school, it just wasn't a thing anymore. And they had a new way of distributing papers, and they didn't need us kids anymore, basically. So I was really bummed. I was really bummed about that. And, but I see where he's coming from when it comes to this idea of kids can't identify with newsies because, unlike with the Mighty Ducks and the Sandlot, well, kids play those sports. And also with the rough uh childhood, like in Big Green, there's a young lady in there and her home life is not good. Same with in Angels in the Outfield, life is not good. So there are kids that identify with that. And it's almost like they tried, here's he started off with, okay, so Les and David's dad got hurt down at the factory. So you could have had that starting point, but it went nowhere. We never see those characters again. And it's like the strike happened the next day. So David and Les aren't bringing money in. So then the sister has to do extra. And what about the mom? We don't know what the mom does. Yeah, you can't identify with that. It's like, okay, yeah, I know that there are parents, and that's the beauty of Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. You see where young Indy and his dad fight all the time. When it's little Indy, like 9-year-old Indy, and he tries so hard to identify with his dad, and it just doesn't work. And then later on, when he's teenager Indy, they just fight like cats and dogs. And it's like, yeah, you identify with that. And even the adventures that he has, like when he's in the war and the places that he goes, and even as a kid, the places that he goes, the stuff that he deals with, you identify with. Like when he sleeps with this gal and then he's rejected, he's head over heels for her, but she rejects him. That's relatable. Okay, that is completely relatable. There are a lot of people who deal with that because they think that there is something there, and it turns out it's not reciprocated. Okay, so there were a lot of those episodes with young Indiana Jones that you could relate to. And in this case, even though you had these little kids in here, like Luke Edwards playing Les and some of these other kids, well, that's great, but you couldn't just litter these little kids around so that little kids could be like, "Oh, look, little kids dancing around. That's awesome." It's, sorry, that's not how it works. Okay, it really is not. It just doesn't work that way. And sorry. So in closing, because I know this is long and I'm sorry about that, but when it comes to the oh no, before I do that, no, I'll go ahead and do it in closing. Because again, this is very long. Um, it did because I didn't talk about the Razzie Awards and the awards that it got. So when it comes to the Razzie Awards, I did talk about the worst original song, which is High Times, Hard Times, that rally song, uh, got the worst picture and the worst director. The worst supporting actor went to Robert Duvall, and the worst supporting actress was Anne Margaret. I mean, here it you had Robert Duvall and Anne Margaret, and you didn't use them to their full potential. You had a rising star, Christian Bale, which this is something else that really bothers me is on Internet Movie Database, they're saying that Christian Bale was supposedly ashamed to tell his friends that the movie was a musical. No, you need to look at more behind the scenes pictures. Like there are pictures where they are at like these get-togethers or whatever. Christian Bale does not look happy. It looks like he's being held hostage. Okay, he obviously was not happy that this was a musical. Like there are behind the scenes stuff where they are hanging out at pizza places and all that stuff. And sure, he's smiling and all that stuff. But there are other times where they are at like these shows and stuff where they have to, do certain things to promote the movie. And he just looks like, again, like a hostage. He's not happy. He's not enjoy. He was like 17, 18 years old. And you're trying to tell me that he's No. Uh-uh. Oh my gosh. That's another thing that bothers me. It's like they're they're trying to talk for him, which is, I guess, is kind of what I'm doing right now. But given the pictures that I've seen of him, it looks like he is, because everybody else looks like they're having a blast and he looks like he wants to leave. So I'm just going by what I'm seeing. But the fact that they're trying to say he was supposedly ashamed. Um, he disowned the movie. Okay. I'm pretty sure he was ashamed. Okay. So, so the Razzies went after this movie. Like I said, Leonard Maltin went after this movie. Roger Ebert went after this movie and said more terrible things about it. And like, okay, so here it says this was interesting to me. This is again Roger Ebert, and it says in the role of New York publisher Joseph Pulitzer, Robert Duvall, wearing a beard that makes him look like one of the Smith brothers, plays a standard fat cat industrialist with none of the wit or insight that the original that the original employed while selling the first mass circulation newspapers of the unwashed masses. Again, this is a lack of research on Ortega's part. The real Pulitzer, who was one of the inspirations for Citizen Kane, must have known something about ordinary people. Here he seems to despise them. And he did. Okay. The thing that bothers me about the fan base is that they fixate so much on the fact that he raised the price of the newspapers and so he was an asshole. Okay. Um, sure, he did, but so did all of the newspapers. He just didn't lower them. Neither did Hearst. Pulitzer and Hearst were at each other's throats. They were competing with each other all the time. And so if Hearst didn't do it, Pulitzer didn't do it. Okay. It's business. But the thing is that yes, Pulitzer did know people. Okay, shoot, the man wanted to be a politician. The only thing that kept him out of it was his thick accent. There was no way he was going to make it in politics, and he knew it. So he wrote about it in his newspaper. Got him in trouble a few times, and that's why he shot at somebody. Go look it up. In a hotel. Oh, gosh. Yeah, so again, this is just one of those um lack of research when it comes to the part of Pulitzer. It was like uh, now again with Robert Duvall, I think he did a good job. He was doing what he was told to do in the movie. And I don't know if he's a method actor. I can't remember if he does any method acting, but anyway. Now another uh award is called the Stinker Bad Movie Award, and Newsy's got that. And there was also a Youth in Film Award, and it says Outstanding Youth Ensemble Cast in a Motion Picture, and the kids won that. All the kids won that. And and that was like the only positive thing. So basically, with that, the like they said, the Razzies swept it. There was the Stinker Award and all that. And then with these, like Leonard Maltin tearing up the movie as it did, comparing it to Howard the Duck. And then of course Roger Ebert, which I will put his in the description, what he said in the description box so you can read it. And but they weren't the only two. There were a lot of people who were going after this movie, and that's really why Disney tried to hide it for as long as they did. When it was the 10th anniversary, that's when the DVD was released, and then when they decided to remaster these soundtracks, they released the soundtrack for one reason or another, I don't know, but they didn't do anything with the soundtrack, like I said earlier. So that doesn't make any sense. And but since then there have been a lot of things that the fan base has been spreading because I'm not sure where it was said that the VHS had a warning on it about smoking and drinking. Okay, now I watched that movie like you would not believe. Okay, I'm surprised that it didn't snap. Okay, the fact that how much it's probably stretched out to the Dickens. But here's the thing is that there is no warning on that damn movie. So I don't know who spread that, but if there is a warning now, which I wouldn't be surprised considering where Disney is at this point, or where movies, Hollywood in general are at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if there is. But when it comes to when they released that pink box way back in the early 90s, there was no warning. Okay. And there's no warning on my DVD. I have the 10th anniversary. There is no warning on that. So whoever said that, where did you get that? Because I've been hearing this, but again, they're spreading such nonsense. Like here on the Internet Movie Database, where they're saying all this stuff, and the big old contradiction where they're saying Jack Kelly was uh, a fabrication and completely made up. But then it says down here, Jack Kelly was born in 1882. Um, okay, like I said, I was going to throw them under the bus. They can be mad at me. They can downvote this and uh, give me traffic because it does help the algorithm. Thank you very much. And but as it turns out, um, this live action Rachel Zegler movie in Rotten Tomatoes, it's higher up. In Internet Movie Database, it's not. Now, I don't know any other place where it reviews. Those are the two that I only know of. And so, but anyway, I will close up here.